Yeah?
Oh, yeah,
All
that's the
right,
goal.
let's go. Rick,
Hey, how's it going?
how are you?
Doing well. Let me plug in here.
Yeah, sure. Take it.
Right. How are you, sir?
I'm good, sir. And yourself?
Doing good. Let me get the camera rolling.
Yeah.
So
Sorry
is it
about
audio only or video? Oh, no worries.
No,
No
we're
worries.
doing video. Yeah, sorry about that. I was having some technical difficulties. So, I was,
I know
so-
nothing about that. I have no
Yeah.
idea what you're talking about when you say technical difficulties.
Listen, man, I'm still getting used to the Zoom thing, but I'm still amazed at the fact that, like, we live in a world where we could do things like this.
For sure.
It's still amazing. It amazes me every time.
So do you know about splitting the audio in Zoom, by the way?
When you say split the audio, what do you mean? Like from video?
Well,
Like,
no, actually splitting the separate inputs from audio. It's a really good trick if you're doing podcasts.
okay.
If you go into where the microphone is, you have your audio settings.
Okay.
And if you click on that, let me find, I believe it's recording.
We're recording,
so
right? Yeah.
So when you click on recording,
Yes.
the second checkbox down says record a separate audio file for each participant who speaks.
Okay.
So if you check that box, what you'll get is you'll get your Zoom file, you'll get an audio only file, and then you'll get in the folder a file for you and a file for me. So if a lot of times I'll do podcasts where I have 4 or 5 guests and somebody's phone will ring or somebody sneezes, or right, but I can edit that out. So even when I drop that into the video, I just
you have enough to edit. You have a lot to use, and you can edit.
Yep.
As opposed to it just being one file. Because I did my first Zoom a couple of episodes ago, and even it like converting and having the audio file and the video file, I was amazed that it did that even.
Right.
So now that you're teaching me that I could split the audio up, that's really good to know.
It's very cool stuff.
So we're recording, right? It's recording? Yeah.
It's recording, yep.
Oh, good. Okay, good. So welcome to the Who and How Club, Rick.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your patience because we were supposed to have an episode a few weeks back. But once this COVID thing hit, a lot of things just kind of got in the way, family-wise, professional-wise, and work-wise and stuff like that. So I'm glad that we're actually getting a chance to sit and talk. But how are you today?
Doing good. I've got a huge event coming up tonight that we're doing some preparation for. So hosting something called a Stories Night. Okay. For a new group called Breaking Average. So I've got that coming up. I've got, I think, 4 virtual conferences in the next month that I'm arranging and or speaking at. So It's been busy times. It's good.
Well, here at the Who and How Club, we focus on who you are and how you became who you are. So I want to just send a special shout out to our listeners and supporters for tuning in. They're going to hear this. They're going to get to know who you are today. And just to preface, you and I we don't know each other at all. We're two strangers. We're just going to have an honest conversation and get to know one another. And it's not the only conversation we'll have. This will be like part 1 of the conversation continues. That's the goal with the Who and How Club. We always check in on our people and people that we have on the show. And we just want to follow up and pick people's brains on how they think, what their lives have been like, who they are as people, how they define themselves, and just take it from there. So
sounds awesome.
Yeah. So if you want to, just off the bat, the first question we usually ask is just like, who are you? Who is Rick?
So I have a simple one-liner when people ask me what I do for a living, and the answer is I make dreams come true. I've been a project manager for 25 plus years. I come from the entertainment industry as well.
Yes.
And so there's not an idea, thought, product, piece of architecture, anything like that ever went up to reach its full fruition without somebody who's called a project manager behind it. So I take really, really, really complex ideas and break them down into daily activities to complete. So that's what I do for a living. Who am I is a product of not only my father, but losing my father at a young age. So he started his own company. He was one of the first software companies ever to automate an insurance claim on an IBM mainframe. Started software company in 76.
Mm.
His dream was for me to be in software and project management. Of course, I was in entertainment at the time. I danced at Disney World. I worked on the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yeah.
I got to tour the world with bands, and so I was going to be in entertainment. You know,
Yes.
I don't know about any of this business crap. And I lost him at 19
Mm.
through to cancer. Got into a really destructive time in my life. Did a lot of I just cut bait and ran. I literally was preparing to go on tour with a very, very famous band. I can't say who, but and I cut and cut bait and ran and lost all those connections. So restarted my life at 20, got into restaurant management, fell into business. And since then, I work with companies like Michael Kors, AutoZone, Bank United, formerly Baker Hughes, some of the top companies in the world, and help them become more efficient, essentially.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. I want to,
Sure.
yeah, I looked you up. I don't, I tend to not look anyone up because I want
Okay.
the conversation just be organic. But after reading a little bit about you, I'm like, I want to be like this guy when I grow up. Like with the amount of things that you've dabbled in, and even coming from the entertainment business, which I can relate to, and we'll get into that. It's just, it was just intriguing to just read like the start and like where you are now and the things that you've
Sure.
dabbled in and been involved in. And I feel like bios and descriptions never do it justice. You know what I mean? It's really about the person and how they define themselves and that journey that they took to be able to do the things that they're doing. Because a lot of people, they define themselves by what they do. But I think we're deeper than that. And sometimes bios and descriptions don't capture that. You're
Sure.
just pretty much stating what you do, what you've done. But let's talk about the person, that human aspect, that experience that you had to go through,
Absolutely.
you know, and what
Yeah.
got you there. So um, let's rewind a bit back because you mentioned losing your father.
Mhm.
If you don't mind, like take me to that moment where, like, if you can remember, like that first feeling you felt when
Oh,
you realized you were gonna lose your father.
I can, there's several things, and actually there's a story arc to that. But you know, at 17, I was on top of the world. I just gotten recruited to Tennessee to play ball, and I was playing volleyball at the time, playing semi-pro. That's what I was going to do for a living. So, you know, on top of that, I come home on the summers and work on the Mickey Mouse Club. So by that time, that's when Justin, Christina, and everybody's showing up. But I worked on all 7 seasons of the show. And so really, I just kind of had I had a really cool life, dude. I mean, I was going to college, I'm playing ball in the summers, I'm earning money on this side and on that
Yeah,
side,
yeah.
just a great time. But he was diagnosed with cancer on my 18th birthday, and I remember he smoked a lot, smoked 2 packs a day, and he was out working on the yard one day and said he felt like he pulled a muscle. And that went on for about 6 or 8 months. He went to several doctors. Nobody even screened or checked for cancer or anything.
Mm,
By the time somebody kind of caught on and said this could be something else, it had already metastasized into his back and all of that. And so when we went in, he had his lung removed. When we went in, they literally told us it's just a matter of months at this point,
mm,
you know.
mm,
And so I put everything on hold. Came back home. I dropped out of college and just spent as much time as I could with him. He was not an easy father. You know, he certainly wasn't, you know, from Beaver Cleavers or Brady Bunch or anything. I mean, he was a tough Italian guy. He was very hard on me, but he was the strongest, most powerful figure I had in my life.
mm,
To take that away, like, what do you do?
mm,
Um, and it caused, I remember being at the funeral, and my mom chose a song, If Tomorrow Never Comes, to play at the funeral. And I was furious at that because I was like, dude, tomorrow's not coming for dad.
mm.
What a horrible song.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
rubbing salt in
yeah.
the wound. In the
And
wound.
I just got so angry, and I just had this feeling here is that I just had to get out. Like I just had to go. And so I remember just moving to Nashville, Tennessee. I had a couple of contacts there, but I really had nothing but restaurant experience and getting a job at Bennigan's and just trying to figure life out. But I just separated from everyone, friends, family, everything, and just went and isolated. When I say there's a story arc, though, a few years after that, he died in '92. A few years after that, I get invited as one of my friends is doing a guest role on Broadway. So the guy who played Mark in Rent was
Yeah.
taking a break, and Joey Fatone filled in, and
Yeah.
Joey invited us all to go see it. And in that, I remember there was an affirmation in the play. It's a beautiful play if you've never seen it. I mean, it's 20 years old now, but it's still gorgeous
I
to this
still haven't
day.
seen it. No.
And so it's about life and love and just acceptance.
Yes.
But there was an affirmation in there that says, there's only us, there's only this, forget regret, or life is yours to miss, no other path, no other way, no day but today. And so what was interesting for me is I was coming from if tomorrow never comes to this new point, new realization of no day but today. Like, how do you live just the best? So I remember going to Joey and I was like, I gotta meet this guy who wrote this, Jonathan Larson. I gotta meet the guy. I gotta thank him for these words.
Yes.
And he says, you can't, bro. And I was like, why? He goes, because Jonathan died.
Jeez.
So when you start to reference the play itself, Jonathan's life work became this. He was written without the play. It's a amalgamation of all his friends and experiences.
Yes.
And his dream was to see the play open on Broadway. And he died the night before it opened. He was alone in his apartment. His heart burst. He had something called Marfan syndrome. And he passed away, and he never got to see the play open and get that review that he wanted. So it's this international hit.
Yeah.
But that became a calling to me. So I even wrote a book called No Day But Today.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where that all came from. So it was my own story arc of stop living in the past if tomorrow never comes, and start living for the future and no day but today.
So in these moments, right, in these defining moments of our lives, like, how do you think, what is the best way to cope? Like, was escaping, you mentioned that you just felt like you needed to leave. Was that a way of coping
Oh, yeah.
for you? Or what did you do to cope in that
You know what? I'd like to answer that better. It wasn't a way of coping. It was a way of giving up. It was a way of not having the internal strength to deal with
loss?
Not only loss, but just overwhelming feeling. And I have a great mentor now, Dr. Rome talks to me about life is going to give you tests, and they're pass or fail tests, period. And if you fail, then it's just going to serve it up again later so that you have another shot at solving it. And you'll keep getting the same lesson over and over until you pass.
Right.
And so to me, that was my first lesson in dealing with a situation that's overwhelming, that like you literally can't think about what the next step is because there's so many emotions. I had another experience like that in 2014 when I almost went bankrupt and lost everything. I was overwhelming. The difference is, and I remember clearly, I was looking in the mirror at my dad's funeral, and that's when I made the decision to run. And I'm looking at the mirror when I'm being, they literally were going to evict me on Thanksgiving Day. And I can tell a little bit more of that story, but I remember looking in the mirror and seeing the same kid at my dad's funeral and just saying, this time I can't run. This time I'm not going to run. Started to make the steps to overcome that and rebuild again. So
I can relate to some of that. I mean, like, I don't know who my father is. There's there's no photo, no name, no nothing. It's just anonymous, and growing up, I've always felt like there was a piece of me just missing. It's like a piece of me unknown that I don't know where I come from that side, but I know my mother and I know that side of the family. And, I've been through things in life where I've been this close to just giving up or feeling like I don't want to be here anymore. Or, that feeling of just leaving, escaping, and not even telling anyone, just going somewhere, being but I like what you said about, going through those challenges until you get it right. Like you're gonna have to face that again if you didn't get it right the first time, and that's okay. Like I think we're gonna overcome those challenges. It's just it takes more time than we think. Sometimes we got to go through it and go through those tests and those challenges emotionally, mentally, and test the waters, see what I like. And then in the future, when we revisit that challenge or that challenge presents itself again, we have something to reference as an example to be like, okay, I did it wrong that time. I did this wrong. I did this right. Maybe let's do it way differently this time around and manage it better. Like managing emotions is one of the most difficult things to do as a human being.
Sure.
Like managing your own, let alone someone else's, right?
Yeah. And I can tell you that I had a very huge ego problem and a very huge anger problem. that I had to come over, even as a young father. My daughter's 19 now. We actually just had a conversation last night about what it was like in her early years and my anger versus what it's like today. And that's a constant piece of work. But I did have an anger issue. I'm Italian, man. I get mad, and I had a lot of education, so I could just use words to I never had to fight. I could just cut you down with a slight of words.
Yes,
And to protect my ego, I used to be brutal about it until I had to come to terms with my ego, which that was the 2012 through 2014. So even then, right? Here's the one thing I know. And I work with John Maxwell now, and I have several podcasts. One of my podcasts, I get to do transformational leaders. I interview transformational leaders.
Yes.
There's not a single one of those leaders that came on that didn't tell me a similar story of overcoming. It's because most people think you have this great idea and you become successful. That great idea is the combination of 500 brutally wrong ideas until that one that sticks. And then everybody's like, oh, wow, even John Maxwell says it took him 25 years to become an overnight success. I love that quote. Love that quote. So people may just be finding me now, but this is 25 years of pain and suffering and overcoming and learning and growing and changing and understanding who I am, understanding what I don't like, and fixing all that stuff at the same time.
And that's why I created this platform, because I wanted to shed a light on that process in between. Like, people will see you like as a successful person, and they'll think it just happened overnight, or they see where you are right now, but they have no idea about what occurred prior to or what led up to it. So much turmoil, even like such turmoil can just spark an idea, and that idea turns you into like this, this thing. But it's in retrospect, when you look at life that way, it's like, what is this how life is supposed to be? Like, everyone has a story. It's a story. It's like a book. Like, you would enjoy everybody's life if you just
for sure.
In chapters.
It's fascinating, isn't it? It's fascinating to me. One of my favorite things I ever heard, I think it was John that actually said it to me, and it's something I've used since, and you can take it since. But, as you grow this podcast, right, it's a labor of love. It's not easy. There's times you're like, wow, what am I even doing this for? And then you get that one comment from a listener that just said, wow, what you just said made it right. And it gives you that drive and that personal thing. But then people are going to come to you as you continue to grow and as you continue to be successful. They're going to go, man, I want to do what you do. But the response is, are you willing to have done what I've done to get here? Right? So people ask me, like, how are you involved in entertainment and all this other stuff? How do you do all the different things? It's like, man, you have no idea what it's taken to get here. This is years and years and years.
There's no answer. There's no one answer. Like,
right.
You gotta sit with me for like a week, and maybe we could.
There it is.
Sometimes you don't even know. You're like,
exactly.
I don't know how I'm doing this.
I don't know why people like that. But
yeah.
And some of it's trial and error. But the point is to never stop trying to adapt what's happening. And I'll give you an analogy for that. I keep hitting this book. I have this book right here on my desk. It's right beside me. But it's Think and Grow Rich. Yes. Now, here's the thing that I like to challenge people. This is the de facto guide of how to become a millionaire, period. 80 million copies of this book has been sold. Okay? But I don't know 80 million millionaires. So why is it a de facto guide? Well, here's why, right? People bought the book. They never read it. People started to read it. They never finished it. Or they never
implemented it. They
never applied it.
Yeah.
So people come up to me all the time. Will you mentor me? Can I work with you? And my answer is always yes. And I do a lot of stuff. I don't say it's free. I say it's an investment, because if I can make somebody successful, there could be something down the road, right? It's all about sowing seeds. Yeah. But before I do that, I make them read a chapter. I'm going to go ahead and give you the answers to the test here. I say, I want you to read the perseverance chapter in this book for 14 straight days. If you miss a single day, then go back to the start and start over. But I will read it. So they go and do that. And I ask one question when it's done. I'll ask, what is your mantra? And if they just look at me, then they're not somebody I'm going to mentor, because they're not somebody who's going to apply any of the time that I'm putting into them. The reason why I say that is in the chapter Perseverance, not only is it a phenomenal chapter, but it says, if you haven't read this chapter, do so immediately before you continue. If they go to that chapter, there's 5 steps in which you create your mantra. So that tells me, did you read it, or did you read it and apply it? And based on that, if you can tell me your mantra, I'll mentor you.
Mm,
If you can't, you're just not ready yet.
mm.
And when you figure out why, you can call me back. Does that make sense?
100%. 100%. Do you feel like the book is I've heard of the book, but I've never read it myself. Now, how would you define being rich? Because rich can mean, of course, money financially, right? But
So
go ahead.
absolutely, it's about wealth, and it's
Yeah.
about what the book is about is thinking and growing. So what Napoleon Hill, he was actually commissioned to go study like the 50 most successful people, and he made it his life's work.
Yes. Yes.
And these were the principles that came out. So it's about the creation of energy. Rich is defined by the person, but I will
Yes.
say that I think a lot of people are limited by their own beliefs of money being the root of all evil. Money
Mm,
isn't this, but money, of course. So one of the greatest experiences of my entire life was called transformation. And it's John Maxwell is working on the transformation of countries. And we get the opportunity to go to Costa Rica and Guatemala and Paraguay and train people through roundtables. So 6 to 8 people at a time on values like listening, empathy,
yes.
attitude. It's absolutely 100% what our nation needs right now.
Yes.
It's not
Love. Learning how to
but
understand each other.
but the core of it is transformation begins with me.
Self. Yeah.
And so I can't force you to transform, Eris, but you and I could talk, and what we could do is commit to each other on listening. We can make one small action that we're going to commit to each other that we're going to do next week, and then next week follow up to see if we did it and what the results were.
Mm.
So I'm doing that in a country, and we trained I think it was 21,000 people in 3 days on how to do this. And for them to be trained by us, they had to have already signed up 6 to 8 people. So the multiplying effect of those, and we're already seeing huge results in Guatemala and Paraguay, right? Costa Rica is relatively new. My point to all that is I took a week off. I paid my way to go be a part of this. I paid the expenses of flying to Costa Rica and the hotel to do this opportunity, but money afforded me the ability to do so. Money gave me the opportunity that I could start to really invest in the human race and into culture, into understanding. I get to do amazing things and spend time with amazing people, but I have to have a sense of security, right? That my bills are going to be paid, and I'm
Yes.
generating enough revenue.
Yes.
So money is the root of all evil if you're seeking it solely for the need of money. But money allows you to invest into nonprofits, to bring people together, to go places that you want to go, to live the life that you want to live. So that's rich. To answer your long answer, that's rich. Rich says I have a completeness of self because I can really value others and give to others without concern. I'll give you something else that I've learned from my father, and stop me if I get winded and
No,
you just throw
you're
me out.
good.
But I'm
I
a
agree
talker,
with
dude.
everything you're saying. I'm glad that this is your perspective.
So my father taught me something about just generosity. When we went out to restaurants, he would have me pick out a table that we felt like, maybe it was a young couple with a young baby, or just pick out any table, and we'd pick up the tab. And the thing is we weren't to tell anybody. So I've taken that to honor my father. But let's talk about that for a second. So money wise, it's not about being big man on campus. It truly is like, I don't want people to know.
Yeah.
And so I tell the server, do not, under any circuit, I don't care how much they beg you, they can't know it's me, because it's not about ego.
Yes.
So I've done that for years now, and I've done it on a grand scale. And let's say probably between $20,000 and $30,000 a year, I invest in doing that. And that sounds like a lot of money, but there's been about 4 or 5 instances over all the times that I've done that where people have found out, and what I've gotten back from me because of it, it has been so I got a 6-figure contract at Microsoft, right? So basically it paid for 5 years of the generosity with one deal that I got. I picked up a table of these family from Bermuda, and they were sitting with a friend of mine. They found out about it. My family went to Bermuda without me, and they rolled out the red carpet. They had people picking them up at the airport, put them in a beautiful hotel. We're shutting down restaurants for them, giving them personal. I mean, all of that would have cost probably $15,000, $20,000. I picked up like $100 tab, right? But it was the fact of when you gift to somebody with pure heart and without intent,
Man,
and with that, then the reciprocity that comes back to
the
you,
universe just, it takes care of itself.
absolutely,
I'm just finding
absolutely.
it hilarious because someone, a colleague of mine, we were speaking last night, and he had a similar message to me, just saying that, you know, when you do give, you know, never expect anything back because it's going to be given back regardless. But don't give to expect back, because sometimes we'll, even within the workforce, you know, or the work field, will want that recognition. Like, you're doing such a great job, but you want someone to say that, to like confirm and like,
Yeah.
you know, push you and give you that energy. Like, yeah, I am doing a great job. And it becomes like this thing, like, let me do a good job just so I can hear it or get that recognition. But just do a great job. Just
Yeah.
give pieces of yourself to this thing, the air, the universe, and it'll come back to you. No one needs to recognize it. No one needs to know what you did, you know, picking up someone's tab. You're just doing, you're just giving. And the results of that will definitely be rewarding. So I believe that. It's just funny that you're bringing this up because it connects to
Yeah.
the conversation last night.
There's actually research behind it as well. Dr. Robert Cialdini wrote a book called Influence, the Science and Practice of Persuasion. And so let's take that word gift. Gift is truly giving somebody for something. But if I'm giving with the expectation of a return, that's a bribe. That's a bribe. And so they did a survey.
In any form, nothing just,
exactly.
not just physical, but yeah. Yeah.
So think about it this way, and it's interesting. Think about the internet and what we're barraged with. And so they did a study, and they were trying to get people to respond to a survey. And we all get these surveys. And normally it's, if you fill out this survey, we will give you a $50 gift card. That's a bribe, right? So to test this theory, what they did is they took the survey divided in two groups. So you get a $50 gift card if you fill out the survey. To group B, they sent out $5 checks in advance and says you can cash this free and clear. If you have time to fill out the survey, we'd appreciate it, but no worries. They got triple the response on the $5 check than they did the $50 gift card at an expense lower. Interesting thing in the study, though, is that the people who didn't fill out survey also didn't cash the check.
The $5
and
check.
So, right. There were a few sprinklings, but it's like less than 1% where somebody's like, oh, free $5.
Yeah.
But by giving it to them without the expectation, they got a better response. People felt more inclined to respond and to reciprocate than, so it's not really a monetary value that reciprocation builds up.
I'm with you on that. I like this. This is good. This is good. I hope the listeners, I'm sure the listeners will learn something from this conversation and everything that you're sharing. And these are the types of conversations I like to have because you're learning. And this is life learning, you know? These are things that we need to be more aware of. And it's easy to get caught up, you know, especially within the work field. At times, you know, we all want to be and feel appreciated when we do things, you know, whether you're in a relationship, familyship, you know, within the work field. You want to hear it. You want to feel like, yo, your worth. They recognize your worth and your work ethic. But you're not always going to get that. But that's okay, right? We have to be okay with that and be confident enough to keep pushing and keep going, because if you're just a person that likes to give and do, just be that, and things will come your way eventually. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You don't have to. I like how you mentioned that bribe aspect of it. If we switch our brains and look at it that way, we'll adjust and realize, you know what, we're not doing to get something in return. That's not the way to be. Just
you question your intention, right? Exactly as you're saying. So we want to give out this gift. Why? Yeah. Well, we want people to sign up to the website. Okay, well, we're going to give it to them, but let's not worry about the website piece. They'll come find us. Yes. Right? You know, that kind of stuff. You have to ask why you're doing the gift.
Why you're doing
it.
You mentioned ego. I want to talk about ego because ego has been in conversation with me in the past week or so. You also mentioned like speaking with your daughter about how your past behaviors were and how it might have affected her and stuff. What was it like to put your ego aside and have that conversation with her? Because that's something that might, you know.
Yeah, no, I think it's
as a father, a difficult prospect. You know?
It's a difficult thing. But first of all, I think there's a lot of power in humility. So by saying I understand that you know, we've had great, like I had a joke at one time with her. She came in and she was yelling at me about something, and I started looking behind me, and she goes, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "The manual that came with you when you were born." I was like, and I just in a feat of humility, I was like, "Look, I don't know either. I've been figuring this out since the day you were
Mm,
born."
mm,
But that was a realization. I think she was like 16, and she was like, "Wait a minute, you don't know everything?" And I was like, "No." Like, and unfortunately, I mean, you say it's different for your little brother than it is for you, and it's true, because I'm using the experiences that worked and didn't work with you to apply to him. So I think you're better parents for child number 2 and child number 3. Child number 4 probably just gets the kick, right? They just, whatever, it's routine at that point. But child number 1 potentially, I think, has the potential of being the most damaged child, because it's experimentation, and
yes.
you want, like, the moment you find out that you as a couple are pregnant, you're like, oh my God, like you already start to fantasize, like, I'm fishing, the sun's setting, the daughter's throwing her arm around me. Yeah, none of that stuff is real, right? That stuff is only in movies.
Yeah.
So it was very, very difficult. I think one of my biggest lessons around ego came early on. I've learned 2 really big lessons. One was I was managing a team, and when I came in, there was certainly a honeymoon period. Like, we were killing it, the team was doing well, and then I started to feel that the team was slipping away from me. Meaning, like, conversations would stop when I would enter in the room. People weren't being as communicative to me, and I didn't know why. I didn't know what was going on. And so I don't know what inspired this, to be honest with you. I just did it. But I remember there was one girl who was kind of like the ringleader,
Mm,
and I knew that she didn't like me. And so I said, "Look, I'm going on vacation for 10 days. So you're in charge, but here's what I want. I want you to meet with the team, write down everything you don't like about me, and then you've got 2 options. You can present it to me with my boss present, or you can just give it directly to my boss. But either way, that's going to be my personal development plan for next year." And I remember leaving. I remember coming in after the 10 days. I know the meeting's coming. I was like listening to Tupac on the way in. I was throwing "Hit 'Em Up" in, man. Like, I was ready for a fight. You know what I'm talking about? I was like,
you're
man,
getting
let's
that
just,
energy going.
oh
Yeah,
dude, I was bumping all the way in. I was like, let's
I've been there.
go.
I've been there. I've been there.
You know what I'm
50
talking
Cent.
about?
50
Yeah.
Cent is my.
Yeah, yeah. Tupac for
They're
me,
not
man.
messing
So
with me today, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
Tupac is it when I need to get hyped up and
Yeah.
get the
I
Italian
hear
going.
you, man. I hear
But
you.
I go into this meeting, and dude, every single thing they brought up, while it was something I needed to change, it was something I literally could change that day.
Mm,
It was a series of behaviors that I wasn't even aware
mm,
that I was bothering somebody. And that really taught me a huge, huge lesson. What happens in a relationship is, like, when you and I meet, it's honeymoon, it's cool, everything's awesome, we're bros. And then I'm going to inevitably do something that kind of makes you go, eh, don't know about that, right?
yeah, I don't like
But
that.
then, but then you start to assume why I did it, and then I start to assume why you're changing, and then the next thing you know, we're fighting about assumptions that are so deeply rooted we can't fix it.
And
What
then
this
and
talk
then that becomes the focus. Even
That
though
becomes the focus.
we might get along in the other categories or around that one situation. But because we don't even address that situation or inquire with each other, pick each other's brains, try to understand this one thing that has happened, now it'll divide us and divide that energy that we had. But we assume things could be, we can't be perfect.
No.
The relationships you have with people just can't be perfect.
And the intent is at some point I come into a relationship with the understanding that I am going to rub you the wrong way for a reason. Don't know what it is, but I refuse to be the guy going, but that's just who I am, so you got to deal with it.
Mm, mm,
That's the root of ego right there.
mm,
When people go, look, I've been successful thus far. If this guy doesn't like me, well, then that's his problem. No, it's not.
mm.
It's our problem, and it's
Our,
our issue to resolve.
yes.
So going back to that meeting, one of the things that one of the key girls that didn't like me, she said that her statement to me was, I don't respect her knowledge. And I said, wow, that one kind of hurt me. And I was like, what do you mean? She goes, well, we were in a big meeting and there was a bunch of side conversations coming on. Something really important was said over to the right of me. And I looked at her and I just made this motion. I was like, now to her, that motion said, you're so stupid. I don't believe you realize that was important. to me, I was like, there was a lot of confusion going on. I wanted to make sure that she did hear that. If not, I could follow up with her and tell her. So two totally just small little intents that grew into this big divide. It turned out everything on the list was something I could solve that day, and something that I literally did solve that day. I never did that to her again in the meeting. And I also always thought with intent before I asked her a question to assume that she already knew the answer, and which was the truth. I was just trying to follow up. So that was one big lesson for me. So then I started to apply that at home and started to ask my, daughter, hey, when you say those things, what do you remember of that time, or where do you think I was coming from in that time? And it's really just to seek understanding, not to defend my actions.
Yes.
It's to understand how I made her feel that way, so it's something that I can change going forward. And
Yes.
I'm not seeking the, oh, Dad, no, you're better now.
Mm.
No. We're not going to surface level this. Like, I need to understand what triggered you in your brain to go into that emotion, so that I can be aware that if I choose to do that, I'm creating that trigger.
Yes.
Right. But
Yes.
it's an awareness thing. And the other thing I've learned, though, is once I solve that, there's 4 new problems behind it. You're never done.
Never done.
Like, no.
It's growth. It comes with growth. Like, if
Yeah.
we're going to focus on, the concept, it's growth. And some people don't want to grow. They're comfortable with, being, like, F the world. They're not caring about other people around them. And I know what that feels like, because I think I've been like that once before. And
Sure.
thankfully I got a chance to experience that, so that I now know that that's not who I really am or want to be. But sometimes you got to try little things. Your personality changes based on your environment, where you are in life. There are certain periods of time you might have been like the most honest person, but
Mm-hmm.
now you're in a situation that might be forcing you to lie. Like, I'm just, using this as an
No,
example.
that's
Like,
true, though.
how will you know what not to be like if you don't get the chance to be something that you're not, or like you don't want, that isn't really you? Like, I'm not saying like you need to go rob a store one day to know what it feels like to be a thief, but I'm sure we've all been some form of thief at some point, or like have really made someone feel really bad, even though that wasn't your intent on
Sure.
doing that. So how do you know? You got to experience those things. It's trial and error, like you mentioned earlier, right? But true growth is acknowledging those things, being self-aware enough to change and adjust, especially like you being a father. Like, you're a father, you brought someone into this world. You want to make sure that there's a level of understanding between you and that individual, that child that you're helping raise, because they're going to come up in the world and they're going to have to treat people a certain way at some point as well. So they're going to use you as a reference, and their experience with you and their family ships and everything. It's all this cycle.
Yeah.
And we got to feed into it in the most healthiest way.
Sure.
I truly believe that. But, I'm sure we've all done things that we look back on and we're like, I wish I didn't do that, but I'm glad. I don't regret it happening that way, because it makes me who I am today.
Sure.
The better
Sure.
version, or the more healthier, the growth stage that we're in life. Like, speaking of ego, like going back to that, what are some things that you feel that the ego is really required for? Because we can't get rid of the ego
No,
100%. The ego is still there. We just have to master the ego. So in
it's not
what
even that.
instances? Yeah.
It's not even that. It's understanding why the ego is getting kicked in. So, for instance, uh, so when I went through the near bankruptcy, I just landed. I own a consulting firm. I have like 15 people working for us, and I'm going up against like the Price Waterhouse Coopers and all the big dogs, and I'm winning. And after a while, and I got on such a win streak that my ego literally, I literally thought I could just think my way out of any situation. So I sign up with Baker Hughes, and it's, they're a Fortune 5 company at the time, right? Oil and gas out of Houston. And they want me to make them a world-class project management organization. I was like, I can do that. And they really had no interest in changing anything. What they wanted to do was hire some hotshot consultant to come in and tell them they were awesome, and off they go. So every step of the way, it was resistance. Well, my ego said, I can fix it. Where if I challenge why I said that, I wanted to be the guy who solved Baker Hughes. That was a bigger problem than me.
Yeah.
Instead of going, they're not ready for me, which is what I do now. I've walked away from a lot of clients that I could see similar patterns that they really weren't interested in implementing or changing. So my ego back in the day was about the win and about the, hanging the mantle of that logo on my wall, right? I got Baker Hughes. I'm a badass. Check me out. And that led to my demise. But I think what happens, even like, I'll give you another example. I'm working with a group, and I'll keep the names out of it.
Yeah.
But I came up with a concept that I'm using, and they're like, "Oh, that's a really good concept. That's awesome." I was like,
Yeah.
"Great, you can use it." And then I see these flyers come out that's advertising it. They've got a ton of people. They didn't invite me to speak, and I don't get credit for the idea. And so I had this is like 2 days ago. Had a
That would
flare.
drive me crazy. That would drive me crazy.
I had a flare of ego.
But
And
as you should, like, that's a moment where the ego has to cut. Like, how do you
it
not
can,
react to that?
but then I started saying why. Well, I did tell them they could use the idea. Maybe they don't see the value in me as a speaker. And I know, like, why does everybody need to know that was my idea? I know that's my idea. And what it comes down to is one key thought, and it's called abundance. If you have abundance thinking, then I will give away all of my ideas freely.
Mm.
Some of the things I'm saying on this podcast, I could write into a book. I could sit there and go, well, I'm only paid, $10,000 as a speaker to say some of the things I'm saying, but I don't believe in that, because I believe by the time the listeners hear and apply that I have such abundant thinking, this isn't an ego thing, but I have such abundant thinking, I'll have something new.
Yes.
Now, if I have a belief that that's going to be the greatest thought that I've ever had, then hell yeah, I'm going to hold on to that. So it's really a question of my fencing out or fencing in, right? It's if we really have no ego and we really believe in abundance, then there's no idea that I should hold on to.
Mm.
And I think if I have enough ideas that are going out there, eventually, again, I'm sowing seeds. Some of those I'll reap. Some of those will fall on concrete. So what? But the ones that I can reap are the ones that are going to pay triple and quadruple the dividends of all those other ones.
And they might not, those ideas might not even be for you. You might be in a room sharing something and it'll benefit someone else. So why be selfish with, let's say, our ideas? Like, a lot of people will say, even with podcasting and stuff like that, like, don't go to one of those networks, don't pitch your show, stay independent, this and that. And because there's this fear of, like, the conglomerate taking over and it not being your own anymore. But it's
Sure.
like, what if me going onto a network will benefit the show, bring it to a different height, and I'm comfortable with that, and then I could come up with another idea and do something over here? Like, why? There's no limit to what
Right.
we're able to do. So that abundance in thinking is key to life, I truly feel.
And see, I joined a network, but I found a network that allows me to be who I am, and
Yes.
I have 100% control of the show.
Made it work for you. You made it work for you.
100% control of the advertisers. I mean, is what it is.
Yeah.
And I have in fact, we just did a great show last week, platform wise of what's going on in our country. I assembled a panel of, I have one of my best friends is a top 5 de-escalation trainer for the police, former police officer, former undercover in Detroit.
Yeah.
My executive producer is just a brilliant guy. He and I have had many conversations on race. And then I brought in an entertainer, and we just had an open discussion. Like, I wanted to start a discussion, not about what's happening, but how do we solve? But how do I even begin? You being a black man, me being a white man, how can I as a white person even begin to have a conversation with you? Because everything I read and heard and listened was start at home. Yes. Great. Yeah. Starting at home. But I want to be able to reach out to someone like you who we've never met and not do any of what I call the white-splaining things of like, well, you don't understand. I have black friends. I went to a school where I was the minority, and that's all true. But I didn't need to run my resume to get on your show, so I shouldn't have to run my experience with black people to have a human-to-human conversation with you. So how do we start that? And what's a proper way? And hear it from people of color telling me and teaching me. That was what that show was about. It was phenomenal.
Yes. I'd love to hear. Was that on the podcast?
It was on Work-Life Balance. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's called Honest Conversation on Race.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna look that episode up because now I'm intrigued. But
Yeah, it was great.
yeah, I think open dialogue is important just as people, as human beings, you know? Like I don't even like to use the term race anymore because
It's
I
not,
truly
yeah.
feel like we're all one race. But I can also put myself in the shoes of people that are going through certain things that feel like there's a separation because of how they're treated, and that needs to be acknowledged as well. And I think I don't know, man. I don't know why we still can't figure this thing out and why we can't treat each other as, you know, love for each other, you know. But
I think roundtables are a huge answer to that.
yeah,
I think it's a gathering of 6 to 8 people with different backgrounds,
yeah,
all focusing on how they can change themselves. Right? None of this will, because instantly when we start going, well, when people start running statistics, which is how people fight this battle,
yes,
right? Because people go, well, there have been more blacks killed by police, and they go, well, that's not true. 6% are black male, and 50 they count for 52%. Okay, all of a sudden now I'm fighting the feeling of you putting me into a category. Either way, when none of us fit any of those categories, we're all our own category.
well,
So until
that's the problem with humans from the beginning of ever.
exactly,
We've categorized everything. We've labeled, we've put a name, like for an example, like animals.
yeah,
I'll use that as an example.
that's horrible. Yeah,
An animal doesn't know that it's called that. Let's say
right.
I'm looking at my puppy now. He
Yeah,
doesn't care. I
yeah,
called him that just so I can
yeah.
understand, and I still don't understand him. So we've given names and categorized people into these boxes, and we do it to ourselves. And that's not to take away from anything or anyone going through what they're going through, especially in this time of turmoil. You know, we're seeing it more so now than ever because of social media and everything. So the world is being exposed to things, and it's hard to figure out what's genuine, what's not, who's genuine with the support and the promoting, you know. But dialogue, communication,
Yeah.
taking the time to try to understand one another, that's the start of things changing.
Yeah, I think one of the dumbest things people say is, "I don't see color." That's the dumb. I see color. I just don't care. Right? But the point is, that's their way of saying, well, I don't judge people based on their skin color. No, you see color. The difference is to respect it. I'll give you a great example.
And if that's the sorry, and if
Go
that's the
ahead. Yeah.
case, if that's the case, a person should say that. Like if when a person says I don't see color, and your meaning behind that is that I don't judge people based on the skin tone, then
Then
say
say
that.
that.
Say that.
Yes.
Don't say you don't see color. The color scheme and how we define ourselves, black and white, don't even match up. Anyway, these are black.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
skin, you know, it doesn't. None of it makes sense. So let's not judge each other at all. In fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, so trying to lump, I guess, this whole, because we've gone down a bunch, several different things, but let's
Yeah.
lump this whole conversation back together again to, I think the greatest thing I taught my daughter was her ability to make her own decision, her ability to think. I never tell her what to think. She leans a lot more left. I'm honest. I lean more right from a business perspective, more left on a social perspective, right? So from a tax perspective, being a business owner, there's real impacts to what people say
Yeah.
to my bottom line and the ability. So there's certain laws and things that I want to see passed that way, but I'm more socially left, and she's very left at the moment. But she's in college, and I think you go through that whole scheme before you decide who you are. But we're discussing certain things, and one of the key things, a little controversial thing that we discussed was there was a reality TV star, Corey and Taylor, the Teen Mom or whatever,
Yeah.
and she has been watching all those reality shows for years, and she's a big fan of Corey. Taylor is a white girl who had some racist tweets in 2001, and but now they're together and they're having an interracial baby, and the special was about the
So
baby.
Corey's black.
Corey's black, Taylor's
Okay.
white.
Okay.
And they were having a baby, and the special was about the birth of their baby. But then you have what's called the cancel culture that came out and got the down and Taylor fired because of something she said 9 years ago or 15 years. But the difference is that they addressed that on the show because Corey's original girlfriend was black, and she's the one on reality television that confronted Taylor the first time about the tweets. And she had grown, and obviously she doesn't think that way anymore. So I want to unpack that and start going, okay, I get the cancel culture. I get the fact that if you put stuff out there, you're responsible for what you put out there on social media. Amen. Own that. But what we just said is, in the last 10 years, if you've changed and you've grown empathy and you've realized you were ignorant and you realize, right? I know I was stupid when I was a kid, right? And God, thank God Twitter wasn't around when I was 15, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
But the point is people change. And by canceling her out, I feel like that sends a dangerous precedence too.
We're not
to
allowed
say,
to change. We're not allowed
right,
to change. Especially
exactly
on social media or anything involved. Social media has been able to dictate people's lives and careers, and from things that people have done so long ago. Like, it's like we're not allowed to change anymore.
We're not allowed to grow.
Yeah.
But I think the message that sends is for the people who we really do need to cancel out, and people we really do need to focus on. Their answer now, we're giving them an excuse of why should I do it? Because even if I do,
you get chastised. And
that was my point.
Yeah.
So so please, anybody who's listening, don't start firing comments to me about cancel culture and all that other stuff. Let me finish that whole arc and point to say, I think it's important that we set an example of empathy for those who have changed and who have overcome, and use them as our markers so that the people who need to change realize that they can.
But let's look at the things that are being used to show empathy or lack thereof. Social media, Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah.
Are these even tools to react? Like, these platforms are used for people to share their opinions. A person could be lying about their lack of empathy towards someone and saying we should cancel that person just to follow the herd. But in their heart, they actually feel the opposite. So
Sure.
it just sucks that we're in a time where these platforms have the power to dictate someone's life and, you know, their experiences, their careers, etc. When these are people behind a screen.
Oh, cyberbullies.
It's wild.
There's two quotes I think that really apply to social media. One came from Ricky Gervais, which says, Twitter's like reading every bathroom wall in the world on the planet. So basically all the ignorant stuff in a bathroom. And it's true. It's reading every bathroom wall in the world at once. But the second one actually comes from Edison. Edison says 5% of the people in the world think. 10% of the people in the world think they think, and the other 85% would rather die than think. And what's interesting is when I watch, like, I get so frustrated during the political cycles because I want to know the issue and decide for myself. But if I read CNN, it's going to tell me their version that they've distilled. Fox is going to tell me their version. But no, and so then I have to decide between the two where the truth is, and I still don't know the truth. We've become so polarized in everything, social media, news, everything, that also says, to me, I understand a lot of the protests on the left. But when they block people from the right to have a conversation, then I don't see how they're any better, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather you have a protest and then challenge the person on the right and have an honest conversation and debate it to where the truth can be found in the middle. But basically what I hear these really good arguments.
Yes.
And I'll give you an example. So the 6.5% black men and 52% crime rate, that's a really good argument. That's not the truth of the whole situation. But if I look at just that one statistic, that's a really good argument. So then the right then has to start to develop a fight to that. And so the mantra I'm hearing, and again, this is just kind of, I look for those. But they came out and they go, well, if Black Lives Matter, why are there so many abortions? And I'm like, oh, that's horrible to say. But that is what they're responding to the vitriol here. So now the left has to get uglier and nastier and find a thing to debate this ugly, nasty thing. And we just and none of that brings us closer. All of that is about focus on being right.
Yeah. On your side.
On my terms.
Yeah.
Versus, again, I think the answer is to get 6 to 8 people. As a matter of fact, I wish I could think of the guy's name, but you guys can find it. Black guy owns a barber shop who impersonated a KKK member on the internet. Beautiful, beautiful TED Talk. It's like 10 minutes. But to summarize it, he said, you know what? He realized the echo chambers. So what he wanted to do was expose himself to different echo chambers. So he created a fake profile, made himself a white racist, and got into those echo chambers and started to see. And he goes, the number one thing he learned for that was empathy for the racists.
Mm.
And that led to what he started calling barbershop conversations, where he ends up getting 6 or 7 people, all of different views, with 2 rules. You cannot yell, and you cannot use any mantra that comes from mainstream and in terms of supporting your point.
Yes.
And we're just going to talk. And the growth that's come out of that, unfortunately, that those people then go back into their echo chambers and they get fired up again and they lose that momentum. We've got to find a way
To keep
to
it.
to start that kernel, that seed of understanding, and grow it.
Yes.
But the only way to do that is for me to make the decision that I'm going to do that for myself.
Definitely. And it's hard to get people to come together when, like, we have all these numbers being thrown out that people want to believe, or, you know, they're being forced to believe in, like, the stats and stuff like that. And then on the other hand, you're just seeing things, the things that you're visually seeing, and we use that as the fact, which is, you know, someone's getting murdered right in front of our eyes, and no number or statistic or anything's going to change what I just saw. So then there's this huge divide, because it's like, we know that this is wrong for a fact. So now we start going against whatever numbers you've ever thrown out, or any, you know, oh, now you want to talk? Oh, now you want to bring us together and have a conversation? It's like, is it too late? Like, the state that we're in, that's the question that's circulating. Is it too late to fix things? Are we so far gone that things are just
never
gonna...
too late. Yeah. It's never too late. But I think it's interesting that each side will hold on to something and they won't let go. And then when they won't let go, they deem themselves to be unreasonable. Therefore, we don't need to listen. And I think that's the problem, is we're not hearing each other. So I'll give you an example. And again, I don't believe anybody should die. Nobody should die.
Or be murdered. No one should
be murdered.
Yeah.
So if you look at the George Floyd situation, I don't care what his record is. I don't care the reason why he was called out there. All that stuff is just deflection. At the end of the day, 9 minutes to lean on somebody's neck is ridiculous. Yeah. And so I think unequivocally, either side, as a human being, we can look at it and go 100% in error. That cop should go. Absolutely is an issue.
All of them.
Don't necessarily mean just because he's a black person. I don't care what color the person was on that. That is bad. We got to do something about it. But then, and again, I don't mean to be insensitive. I want to have a conversation. I feel like you and I have a good rapport on this. Then I look at Rayshard Brooks and I look at that situation. And so were there mistakes made by the police officer? Sure. I think that they could have de-escalated. I think they could have changed an arrest technique. But until you're in that situation, you can't judge. So I went to Daryl Rivers, who is a black police officer, de-escalation trainer. And I was like, tell me what the law is. Tell me what your training is. And I don't think a lot of people understand what the police training is. So now, should he have died? No, we don't want anybody to die. Could we have handled it better? Sure. But should he be fired and now have 11 counts where essentially everything he did is legal in what they're trained to do? Right now, George Floyd was not legal. You're not trained to do that, right? Yeah. But in this situation, there was patrons around. We can nitpick it and we can grow from it. But I don't know that person needed to be sacrificed just for the fact of everybody's going, well, we want justice. Yeah. That's not justice. That's reversing it to the other side. So now what the end results you're seeing is the police officers are not showing up. They are afraid to do their job, which we hire for. And at the same time, I see the people in Chicago that are mad that the police officers were taking a break during the riots. Now, I think that was a bad idea as well. But I can understand the police officer side. They're like, well, if we go out there and enforce the job, then you're going to yell at us and fight. And if we don't enforce the job, then like, what do they do right now? Like, what a weird time.
What does anyone do? Police officer or not, we have good cops, bad cops. We got good people or bad people, regardless of someone, you know, listen, I haven't looked at the Rayshard situation because there's so much going on that is the one story I need a break. I need a break from all of it. So I don't know too many. I've been getting updates on my phone and all these newsletters that I'm a part of and stuff like that. And I know that something has occurred, but I don't know the full details, so I don't want to talk on that. But
that's fair.
Going on George Floyd and all of that, and whatever procedures police, you know, you had mentioned that, you know, it is illegal for them to follow these procedures and take this sort of action and how they maneuver and their training. But should it be, if the end result is someone dying, should those ways and those trainings be legal if that's the end
But
result?
that's the I think that's the core issue.
Yeah.
So it was it the police officer that was being bad. So the two things that I've really listened to that again opened my eyes. Daryl does some great Facebook lives. His name's Daryl Rivers, Darryl Rivers,
Hmm. Hmm.
and he actually explains the police procedure and what they're trained to do,
Right.
and then unpacks it. Wayne Brady,
I'm gonna look that up
yeah, Wayne
today.
Brady is another dear friend of mine, the entertainer. He
Yes.
and I went to high school together.
Yes.
He made a really, really good point, though, in terms of like, and even Chris Rock did too. When we start talking about, yes, there's bad cops, but should there be, right? So I think that there's truly an issue there because those are the people that you call for help. And that was the big thing Wayne had said that I thought was pretty profound. He was talking about people that shift to black on black crime when you're talking about police officers. He goes, but you don't call another black man to come help you in a stressful situation. You do call the police. So there is a difference, right? Black on black crime is something that yes, we as a society need to deal with, as a culture we need to deal with. But what we're talking about right now is when I call you for help, and this is the return, and now people are afraid to call for help because of that. Right, that's a larger issue. That's what we're discussing. I thought that was beautifully put in a way to really kind of kill the noise as to what it is
Yes.
that we're talking about.
Yes.
But coming back to that, then with Daryl saying Daryl's personal opinion was that they shouldn't be fired. They should be on administrative leave. Should we look at the training practices? Yes, but should we punish the person for following the training for the job that they were hired to do? No. So the problem is the procedure or the training at the moment, not the police officer,
Hmm.
especially if the police officer followed complete protocol.
Well, give me the gist of what the
Richard?
gist of what happened to Richard. Yeah.
So again, and this is just my understanding and paraphrase based on everything that
Yeah.
I've watched.
Yeah. This is
Wendy,
good. This is good
yeah,
background, Chris.
Wendy's called out because somebody had fallen asleep in their car in the drive-through lane. Okay, so he's obstructing the drive-through lane. Police officers approach, knock on the door. Turns out, he was asleep. They actually get him to pull over. He is being cooperative at that point. So they pull him out. They talk to him. They're being cordial. They give him a field sobriety test, and he fails the field sobriety test.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, they try to place him under arrest. Now, here's some of the things that I'm hearing on both sides on this. So at one point, he says, "Can I just lock my car and go and walk home?" And so they're like, oh, the police officers could have let him go, but they've already administered a test. They've already made the decision to arrest. As they start to put him in handcuffs, he begins to fight. They go to the ground, and he gets the better of the two officers. I mean, he lays it on him pretty good. During the struggle, he takes one of the tasers from an officer, begins to run. As that officer chases him, he turns around and fires, or backward. He's not completely turned around, but he goes back like that, fires the taser at the officer. The officer jumps to the side, grabs a gun, pops him 3 times in the back. Okay.
Oh, that's fucked.
So,
Excuse
yeah,
my language. No.
but
There's no justification.
but let's take that down.
Black or not, person or not. That's just like, if you know that he took a taser.
But you don't know that he took a taser.
So they
know
didn't
that
know
because
that his taser was taken?
they know that he took a piece of equipment. Now the taser's got a bright yellow, but again, we all have this beautiful ability of being able to break it down on tape and think.
Yeah.
When it's happening, bang, bang, bang. But the way Daryl describes it again, so he said, first of all, there was resisting arrest. He goes, second of
Crazy
all,
story.
it was assault on a police officer. Third of all, it becomes deadly assault when you steal a weapon and when you point a weapon and fire it.
Yeah.
And so Daryl tells a story of him being tased and him having to fight through it with the guy that got him had the intent to come grab his gun and shoot him in the face. Right. So unless you're a police officer and you're fighting that every day, it's hard for us to say. We can easily sit here and say that's not justified until we've been fired at in how many different occasions and how many different types of arrests. Right. So
Here's a piece of that I think about. If they're aware that this gentleman is under the influence, he's drunk or whatever. Like, okay, I work in the social service field, right? Okay. So I work with homeless. I work within the homeless sector, and I work with a lot of homeless people, and we know, they indulge. A lot of people are
Sure.
users. They use drugs, they drink to cope, whatever. There's a vast, who knows the reason why. There are a million reasons why people do the things that they do, and there's a stigma around the homeless sector and all of that jazz, and the people who use our services. But let's just say, and I've had this experience where, like, one of our clients, our residents, they're drunk. And when a person is drunk, they're going to do things that they wouldn't normally do when they were sober. Do we, we have had to, like, give people breaks from our site that I manage, to go take a break, or to get that alcohol out of your system, come back different tomorrow, come back normal, your true self, normal, and we give them chances, because we know that who they are in this moment, it's not really who they are. They're just under something. They're going through something, et cetera, et cetera. So if the police know that he was drunk and he's going to resist in that manner, like, he's not even in his right mind.
Well, they didn't know he was going to resist in that manner, right? It's just so all of that from the
But
point.
he's drunk. Of
No,
course he's going to.
fair enough. But from the point that the scuffle happens to the shooting is literally like 20 seconds. I mean, like, all that goes down in 20
It's
seconds.
crazy.
But
Crazy.
let's
Life lost. And
I know, but let's first of all divide for a second. Can we at least say that the death to George Floyd and this death are completely different, in the sense of, one is, like, George is barely resisting, not even resisting. He's already in handcuffs. He's on the ground. You got 5-6 police officers over him, and one's kneeling on his neck.
but there's
That's
one common.
egregious.
There's the
Go ahead.
common denominator, which are 2 deaths.
No, that's fair.
People died by the hands of police. The people who were supposed to. Okay, go on.
I'm just going to say circumstances are different. I see
It's
one.
it's just a different situation. It's a different scenario. Yeah.
But I didn't see George Floyd strike somebody. I didn't see George Floyd try to disarm a police officer. I didn't see George Floyd fire anything at a police officer or run.
Yeah.
So that's the level in which I'm looking at this. Again, I'm not in
but
no
George
way,
Floyd
shape, or
wasn't
form.
drunk. George Floyd wasn't drunk. This gentleman was under the influence.
No, that's fair. That's fair. And I'm no way trying to justify. I'm just trying to give you the view of how I look at things. Yeah.
For sure.
Because again, I'll start this with, neither one of them should have died. But I think each one of them has a set of circumstances that we have to look at, and the intent of the circumstances of why, right? So again, even kneeling on the neck, fireable offense for 30 seconds. The fact that it went on for 9 minutes, dude, like that, there's no law, reason, circumstance, anything that you can give me to justify why you did that. But on this hand, I feel like there could have been better training, but what we also don't know, and we haven't heard the experiences of those specific officers. Like, who knows what mindset they're in, coming from wherever they came from. And I think that they're human as well, right?
Yes.
And I'm, again, not trying to justify them. I'm just saying that we've swung so hard to immediately say you're fired and there's 11 counts, and he's up for the death penalty based on the charges for what went down. And if you go by the law, 100% by the law, everything he did was legal. Everything that happened in George Floyd was not.
But Rick,
I hear you.
He took a life.
He did.
He used his gun and shot a person, policeman or not, using the training or not. You took a life. These are the people that we're supposed to call.
And they were called.
When a person dies in the hands of a person who's supposed to protect you, there's something bigger going on, man. These people are more than just police. They might.
So when is it?
Yeah.
So then I think it leads to a great conversation. Again, neither one of us is taking side. I think it's a great debate, honest conversation.
This is really good.
So then why give them guns?
The assessment, how they assess these individuals, really needs to be looked at further, because there have been stories and cases where people who
don't disagree with that at all.
People who are more, let's say, intelligent, for an example. There have been studies and stuff that show, like, people who might pass with a higher test score, let's say, don't get chosen to be an officer, because the departments and stuff, they feel like these individuals are too smart for the field. they might even, they might, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, they could, it's easier for them to become a bad cop than remain a good cop because they're too intelligent. They're highly intelligent. So they can maneuver within the system very different compared to like the average Joes who get chosen to be officers. Not to say they're average Joes or to diminish them. I'm just saying compared to the folks with these higher IQs and stuff like that. They
I'll
need
give
to
you what
really, yeah,
I'll give you what Daryl says on that, and
yeah,
it's somewhat controversial the way he says it. He goes, unfortunately, at some point, the police are chosen because they have the ability to produce violence. That's exactly word for word is what he says, because he says there are times and moments where there are people that he goes, not everybody wants to be arrested, and people will fight, and people are dangerous to the community. And he goes, understand that if they let him walk home, if they let Richard walk home, would he have probably caused harm to himself or somebody else? Probably not, right? But the thing is if he had, then the
he's
reaction,
responsible. Yeah,
right? The reaction and reversal will be on the other side. So even when you're arrested or detained, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be charged and booked, right? That's giving you, to your point, dude, you got to let this alcohol get out of your system and go
yeah,
somewhere safe and come back.
yeah.
Through the resisting of that is where this comes through. And so, but he, coming back to what Daryl said, and again, it's uncomfortable to say, but he's like, dude, you've got to have people who are willing to fight in the terms and needs of when it happens. And what I'm afraid of at the moment is if we make police officers so afraid to do their job and we have such an overreaction to the other side, the bad people who in the first place were already going to be shooting at police officers and doing all the others, they become emboldened now. And how do we enforce the laws? And so
Yeah,
I think all this to say is it takes conversations like these,
yeah,
and it takes conversations with 6 to 8 people sitting down and going, and the reason why I asked you that question is
yeah.
I think that's where you start. Should a police officer carry a gun? Yes or no?
Mm.
And if we say yes, then to go, okay, then what is the right time? What is the right time to pull a trigger? Because there's no doubt police training is aimed to fire at center mass. And one of the things that are coming out of Rashard Brooks is, well, what if they had gotten him like in the leg,
Mm.
where he's still alive, but he's still
Yeah,
incapacitated
yeah,
and still, and so
yeah.
that starts to change. Okay, well, maybe that's the thinking. Should they carry guns? Yes or no? If so, when is it okay to deploy and when is it not? And what's that judgment call?
That whole process needs to be revisited
But
because the
it's
people,
complex, isn't it? It's not that simple.
very much so. How many police officers were with the Richard? Because
One
this
one
boggles.
other, two.
So two in
So,
total. Okay.
two in total, and both of them were on the ground and getting pounded. But I mean, the guy got the better of both of them. But
Hmm.
he takes the taser from one of them. The other one's the one that gets on his feet to start to chase. So that's where the confusion can come of whether or not he got his gun or a taser. Like when you say, how does he know?
Mm.
He's trying to deploy his taser, but all he sees, like you can see it on the film, a flash. So whether that's a taser or a gun or whatever, I'm sure the police officer knows through their training. Again, I'm just
Who
looking at
was
it as a
recording
layperson.
it, or was it a body cam?
So they have body cam. The main film that I've seen was the surveillance from the Wendy's. The
Okay.
surveillance camera has a great view of
View
that
of
of the
everything.
main part. And then there was a lady recording on her phone from the Wendy's. So you got 3 different angles. You got 3 different pieces. There's a lot of information in this one to
God.
start to say, what's happening. But the immediate reaction, what's occurred in Atlanta since, number one, in protest, they went and burned the Wendy's down. And I'm like, so the Wendy's really didn't have anything to do with it, except that was the location where it
Because they
occurred.
called.
But
Well, they called the police on it.
right,
Yeah. So
right. So they went and burned the Wendy's down. Um, the uh, the mayor fired the police officer. The DA's brought 11 charges against the police officer and his partner.
yes.
So, and then so that's all occurred. But now, from what I understand, it's not confirmed at the moment, but more police officers called in today out. They called sick. They called the blue flu,
Yes.
kind of in protest because they're like, what do we do? Like, if we show up and we're in a dangerous situation and we have to discharge our firearm, if we're going to be brought up on murder charges, then I'm not going out there. I'm not going to go in that field.
And where did the Richard thing happen?
Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta. Okay.
Yep.
All right, Rick,
which
we're
is
gonna
already like a financial or a racial
exactly,
hotbed. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I want us to eventually, like on another episode, we need to
Yeah.
revisit or find a way. I want to do what you're mentioning. I want us to find a way to have a round table, and maybe outside of the Who and How Club episode, you and I could discuss and I
Yeah.
don't know, plan something around that because I'd love to be involved in that and be a part of the
I can bring
conversation.
Daryl
But
to that. He'll come. Yeah.
we can, yeah, we'll talk off air and stuff like that
Yeah.
and figure something out. I want to get back to you because this is all really great substance. And ladies and gentlemen, for those listening and watching, whoever's going to see this, if there's something that you heard today that resonates with you, whether it's about the ego, whether it's about growth, whether it's about being a father, an entrepreneur, just a person in general, or even the conversation about, the turmoil going on right now in the world, feel free to leave a comment, DM me, DM the club at Who How Club on Instagram or Twitter, or email us whohowclub@gmail.com, and just touch base with either myself, or if you have a question for Rick, leave a comment under the video or email. Oh, I'm going to leave your details and stuff in the description
Perfect.
of this episode so people
Perfect.
could contact you, look up your books, and just, stay in touch with you as well if need be. A couple of things I wanted to ask you as well, because you're from Birmingham.
I live in Birmingham. Yeah. Grew up in
But that
Orlando, Florida. Yeah.
Orlando. Okay, so what's it like in Alabama? What's it like
It's
for
I've
us
been
Canadians who have never been
yeah.
there? Like what's it like?
So Alabama gets a really bad rap, but it was the center of a lot of the civil rights. So
Yes,
the
yes,
church bombing, the video that you see of hoses and dogs that happened right here in downtown
yes,
Birmingham.
yes,
Selma is 60 miles south of me, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and where the famous Sunday Bloody Sunday, and of course then the march of Martin Luther King. All that just happened around here. So racially, still very divided. I know people here born and raised still very racist and very racist thoughts,
and
and
Veterans Day too, right?
yeah,
Veterans Day
yeah,
is it's sort
yeah,
of like the parade, the big event happens in
yeah,
Birmingham for Veterans
yeah.
Day. Yeah.
So a lot of diversity, a lot of still really hurt feelings and that kind of stuff. So it's a great place. Now, state wise, I've lived here. I got transferred here with a restaurant, and I just said I was going to stay for a year and fell in love with the place.
Yeah.
In terms of business, I can be anywhere from Florida to North Carolina over to Texas in about 10 hours of driving, on top of flights and all that kind of stuff. I'm 2 hours from Atlanta and can hop on that flight and go anywhere, so it's really convenient.
Yes.
But where I live in Hoover has been a great place to live, great place to raise kids. Pretty progressive community, and involved community. So it's a big enough city that we get cool stuff to do,
Mm-hmm.
but small enough that your neighbors, your people,
Yes.
and get
Would you
around. So
would you ever live anywhere else? Have you
oh
ever
yeah.
lived in Canada or moved over here?
I lived in 17 cities, 14 apartments inside 12 months when I was at a restaurant. I was a turnaround specialist. So I got sent into the worst kitchens, and I had like 2 weeks to implement new systems,
Yes.
fix it, and go on to the
Yes.
next one.
Yes.
I'd love to live in New York City. I love New York City. I love the buzz. I love everything about the city. I enjoyed living in Boston. I enjoyed living in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Chattanooga is probably one of my favorite places to live. Just beautiful country. Again, big enough city, small enough town, and just really you can get anywhere from there.
Yes.
Lived in Colorado for a little bit, enjoyed that. So I worked a ski season for in Aspen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was born in California, raised in Orlando. I pretty much lived all over the place.
So in the end, let's say when you're like, let's say retiree in that retirement age, sorry, or stage. I don't even like to use age anymore.
Yeah,
I say stage because we're all in different stages of our lives. Where's that one place that you'd like to end up and just
Rome,
see yourself in the
Italy.
last?
Yeah. No, so I go to Italy
Yeah, yeah.
every other year at a minimum, sometimes every year, but Rome without a doubt, especially as we become more global and Zoom and
Yes,
everything else that
yes,
comes. I
yeah.
can do my job
You
anywhere.
could do it anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm with
So
you
I
on that.
prefer to do it in Rome.
Yeah, I wanna be somewhere in Europe as well. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to stay in Canada forever. I want to settle down, maybe have a family, in
Yeah.
Italy or Greece or somewhere. I don't have any children or anything like that. And I'm just a single guy with his puppy, doing his podcast and
Yeah.
being focused on art and music and stuff like that. But in the end, yeah, I see myself somewhere abroad,
Yeah.
just relaxing and just enjoying the view. So
Yeah,
it'll
Rome is definitely a place that I can just exhale and just breathe. I just love the place. Architecture, the art, the
yes,
culture, the
yes,
history, it's ridiculous.
yes. Another question. So for you, like, what keeps you going? Like, what keeps you going? When you
It's
look
like,
at your life, when you look back at your life and see all the things that you've been through, challenges, et cetera, what is that thing that has kept you going to not give up and to, you know?
I'm never happy. I'm never satisfied. And I think that's a good thing. I think happy and satisfying and reaching all of my goals equals complacency.
Mm,
It means I'm done. I think at the point that I feel like I've accomplished everything I was set out to accomplish, I might as well retire.
mm,
I don't see if you're truly in growth in leadership and thought leadership, you should never retire. You
mm,
should continue to learn, continue to grow, continue to challenge, continue to change. So I think there's a restlessness in my heart that says I can always be doing more.
mm.
And that's the driver. So the question is, how do I get to do more? How do I get to a step? So what do I have to put in place to do so? And if you read Think and Grow Rich, you have a mantra that you put in here. And I'll tell you mine. I tell it to myself every morning before I go to bed, every night before I go to bed, every morning when I wake up, as the book says, and it's about energy, is that I'm going to create $2 million worth of online products free and clear per year, and that's it. What was interesting when I first started that is I thought it was going to be my products. And what's funny about energy in the universe is I heard about a year ago, who says it had to be your products?
Mm.
And so I've completely shifted my focus into producing other people's podcasts, producing their dreams, doing all the stuff that I had to learn how to do myself, write books, all that other. So I have this whole team and system,
Yes,
and I'm helping people go through that. And I'm doing that at this point, no charge, only for a percentage of what they do. So again,
yes,
out of 20 projects, one of them's going to hit. One of them will hit, but that one should hit so big that it compensates me for the other 20, and I'm
yeah,
creating 20 opportunities. So I'm still on the same mantra and I'm creating the same energy. I'm just now doing it for others versus focused on how do I achieve that just for me,
right, right.
right? For me to hit my goal now, it really means all of my artists and people that I work with have to generate 20 million
Mm.
in revenue in order for me to get my two. And I
Yes.
think that's a great goal to have.
If there was something that you would want to, like, you know, a message or a lesson for our listeners or our viewers, like, what would be that one thing that you tell them? Like, if you had 2 minutes of their time.
Absolutely. And if you're watching the video, I don't know if you can see that weird wood structure right there, but
Yeah.
that's actually Sisyphus, right? And that's kind of my spirit animal in a way, but Sisyphus is the one with the rock that you have to continually push up the mountain. And what I ask them is what do you want? And it's funny, if you ever ask somebody, what do you want? They're going to tell you the 5 things that they don't want. Well, I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to work for another boss. I don't want to have to worry about bill. Okay, those are all the things you don't want, but what is it that you want? And so I take that then and say, I know many people who want to succeed, but I know few people who have the will to. So what I need you to do is to change your statements from I want to I will
Mm,
so that you can start to feel that impact. So I want to do a podcast. No. I will do a podcast.
mm,
Well, I want to inspire 1 million people. Oh, no. I will inspire 1 million people. And if you really start to study the brain, the conscious, the subconscious, and what rules your thoughts and what rules positive and negative energy and all those things, your subconscious is your biggest thing that will hold you back. Your own
yes.
thoughts. Why would
Yes.
anybody listen to me? Why does anybody care? All the other, that's your subconscious. Nobody's even saying that to you. Your subconscious is just beating up any idea before you have any chance to do anything. So if you you actually can train your subconscious by changing want to will. If you wake up every day and say, I will do a podcast, your likelihood of doing it is way different than I want to do a podcast.
Yes.
So
Because you,
change want to will.
yes, I like that. I like that. And I think the brain, as we know, like, it could be our biggest, you know, it could be our biggest challenge, our biggest weakness, but also our biggest strength if we, you know, get a hold of it and so start controlling our thoughts just a bit more and what we're intaking in here. Because what we're intaking in here can definitely, we can manifest things, you know, some negative things. We could dream
Oh,
some crazy, you know, when we go to
yeah.
bed at night, our brains are still rolling on that negative thought that we might have had that day, and it just affects your whole. We got to control it a bit more, control our minds.
There's a comedian I just saw that said, you ever have it where your body's so tired and as soon as you lay down, your brain just goes, and here's everything that you're worried about. And by the way, I'll throw in the scariest movie scene you've ever seen.
Anxiety, man. You wake up anxious. You're like, was that real or just a dream? So.
But to bring this all together, this whole
Yes.
interview together, and I really appreciate your time and openness and allowing
Yes.
us just to have a discussion without judgment. I think it's so
100%.
important, and I
100%.
appreciate your platform. And hopefully nobody judges anything that we've said.
Oh, they're
either
going to
side.
judge, but it's okay.
Yeah, but,
as long as we don't.
But we want to do that without judgment. We want to serve without judgment because it comes from a place of understanding, not judgment. There's a whole difference there.
Perspective.
Yeah. But you said you looked at my bio and you wondered how I dabbled in so many things. And the answer to that is I don't ever say I want to do something. I just simply say I will do it.
You will.
And the next thing you know, it happens. And you know what? A lot of stuff I've done doesn't work out, but I've done it. And I've taken that aspect and I understood what didn't work and I've applied it to the next thing that I go and do. But I don't ever sit around and wonder what it might feel like to jump on stage or what it might feel like to do a podcast or what it might feel like to produce music. Done it. I just go, just do it.
I am really inspired by this conversation today. And I do appreciate the opportunity to just have an open dialogue about things and perspectives and the difference and, just what we see, what we're seeing at the moment and being able to just have that conversation. I think that this is a start to something like in reference to what you were talking about. This is how conversation should be. No judgment. It's not about right or wrong. It's just about, the difference in perspective and sharing that.
So no judgment.
Yeah.
No standard mass media statements.
Yeah.
And no hard feelings.
No hard feelings. Yeah.
And we grow.
And we grow, exactly. And we look forward to the next conversation. It doesn't stop here. We do have a segment on the show called Ask the Club. So our guests are able to, pose any type of questions, two to three, or even just one, whether it's towards me or anybody listening could chime in on it as well. Do you have any questions for the club today or anything you wanted to?
Yeah. Again, I'd love for you to figure out what it is that you want. Mm-hmm. Just sit down and say, what is it that I want? And have two columns because again, you're going to come up with all the things that you don't want, but you got to drive to that purpose of what you want. And a lot of people don't know how to answer that early on, and that's fine. So start doing things to figure out what that is.
Yes.
So I want to host a podcast. Do you? Well, what if you were on 4 different podcasts to see if you like it? Then you can move to right. But once I decide what it is that I want, then we can decide a path. So my biggest question to you is what do you want? And then there's a better question behind it. Why do you want that?
Why do you want it? Yes.
Because if you know the why, the what becomes easy. Right. And if you know your why and you know what your purpose on this earth was to do, then go do it.
Yeah, the what becomes very easy. It takes care of itself once you figure out the why. Yeah. Doing something or wanting to do something without reason, it's kind of hard to fathom. Like, I don't understand. There are people that just, I don't know. They're kind of like, but I think without these folks, we kind of, we need folks and examples like that to know that that's not the right way to do things, let's say.
Right.
If there are people that are just doing this, sort of like robots, I call them robots, that there's no goal. They're just at it on a day-to-day basis. But when we look into things on a deeper level and figure out the why, and the who, what, when, where, why, and the how, you know what I'm saying? That's what we do here. But
I call those people masters of activity versus masters of achievement, right? Activity doesn't equal achievement. It just means you're really busy. Not accomplish anything. You're not building towards anything, but man, are you busy? You got tons of stuff to do. You did a bunch today. But what if that was equaling achievement and doing the right things at the right time? That's my big challenge. The other one is the question I'd ask him is, who have you served today? I think servant leadership is the pure leadership, and it's the greatest reward when you pour into other people. And so when you wake up understanding that everybody should be valued, but the question is how can I add value to each person I'm going to interact with today? I sat down and thought, I knew you were going to ask me a question. I sat down and thought, and I listened to your past episodes. I looked at your podcast and said, how can I be prepared and what can I do to bring value? And how can I add value to this conversation? In doing so, I got value because I got reminded of certain things I wanted to talk about. I got some thought. Now, how many times do you actually wake up and look at your calendar and go, how can I specifically add value to this person that I'm going to meet with?
Mm.
It's a really strong question to ask. And I guarantee your perspective changes when you start to ask yourself, who did I serve today? Not what did I do? Who did I get to meet with? What did I accomplish? What did my bank account look like?
Yeah.
Who did I serve today?
Yeah, it's more of a selfless way of living, you know? It's not just about me all the time and what I got
But
going
it's a
on.
great feeling, dude, though.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's a great, it will change your life.
I agree.
Change your life.
I agree. I'm battling with that, balancing that. I'm in a selfish stage of my life.
But that's a season but that's a season that's okay. See, that's the thing is when people say like, who did I serve today?
Yeah.
A correct answer is me. Because you can't give to people what you don't have. We always use the cup and saucer, right? So what I see so many people do is giving people drinks out of their own cup, right?
Yes.
But eventually it's going to drain. You've got nothing left.
Yes.
But if I can fill my own cup all day to where it's running over onto a saucer, then anybody can drink from the saucer.
Yes.
And there's more coming.
Yes.
You can't give what you don't have. So it's
Yes.
okay. And it's not wrong to wake up and, or even at the end of the day, who did I serve today? I served me, right? That's okay. That's not selfish. And you have to have seasons of build, right? Right now, what you're doing is you're in your own garden of life. And there's seasons of life. So if you don't plant seeds and if you don't grow seeds, then you can't reap them to give them to somebody else. So it's completely okay to go, you know what, right now, I'm growing seeds that I can give out later.
Yes.
But it's on me right now.
Yes. Yes.
Perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. I like that. And that is not in the negative selfish way. I do think that there's a positive selfish and a negative selfish. Like the negative selfish is when it's at the detriment of others. And when you're doing a lot more damage than good. But that selfishness where you're, like you said, planting seeds and working on yourself and pushing yourself to grow, to be different from yesterday and how you were last week and months ago, or, I think that's a good selfish. A lot of people don't take enough time to themselves to reflect, to assess, where they're at in life right now and how they think, how they feel.
Let's talk about your good selfish and bad selfish. So let's take I want to write a book. Why? Well, I want to get famous, get money, start to speak. Okay, that's the bad selfish.
That's a bad selfish. Yeah.
And so one of the questions I like to ask when people say, I want to write a book, help me. My question is, who's going to read your book?
Yeah.
And that sounds horrible when you say it, but the point is are you writing the book to serve other people so that they can grow from either your
to
life
inspire
experience,
others, yeah.
Right? Or is it to tell an ego story that you think you're going to get rich off of, right? That's the good selfish and bad selfish, but this same intent to write a book. Just the why is where you divide and start to go.
This is good. This is a great episode. I like this one. A lot
We've
of
been
gems.
killing. What have we been talking for 4.5 hours? Time. When things are going, people are flowing, and you vibe with somebody, time just flies. And I've absolutely enjoyed being a part of this.
Yes, same, Rick. I want to say thank you. And you are an official member of the Who and How Club.
That's rock. Do I get a hat or anything? Is there a hat? Is there
a
membership card?
I'll send you a mug. We do the do the badges. We have the Who and How Club badges. I don't have one on today. I gotcha. But I'll probably send you one as well. And here at the Who and How Club, we focus on who you are, how you became who you are, and that process in between. So I do appreciate you just sharing and being open with me. And yeah, it was I'm thinking about it now. It was just very open conversation. And
we went a lot of different places. So hopefully we said something that inspires somebody to take their own action and own activity, even if it's just to research, to go find out and grow for you.
Yes. So the conversation continues and we'll be in touch. And I just want to say thanks again for being here. And we will talk soon.
All right, partner. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much.